Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. It is a bit of a different look here in this room today, isn't it? Changing the scenery over to World War One from World War Two, where it's been the focus of version 3 of Global War 1936 to 1945 all year. Now I'm switching gears and I'm doing 1914. We did a recent play test up in the Lion's Den over at Panzer King's house. And that was fun, and I learned how to play the game a lot more. Learned that we learned the mistakes we were making. Oh yeah, that makes sense now. You know that. So anyway, like you could say it wasn't a successful play test because we didn't get all the way through it, but it was because we learned a lot about how to play the game and how not to play the game. So anyway, going to be doing some more play testing, but I thought I'd go through the game with you, or specifically the unit profiles, so that you'll see if you decide to tune in and watch the play testing, then you'll be able to know what each and every unit does. So before we get to the units, I'll just quickly pan over these. These are the battle boards, but these are a work in progress, and so are the units that I'm going to show you. Like they're probably done, but they're not necessarily set in stone. Like something could be an IPP more expensive, or roll at one higher, or something, you know. Like they're not all written in stone because not all the play testing's done yet. And who knows, maybe a small attribute added to one of them, or taken away from one of them, or something like that, right? Just tweaking it right now. So the numbers that I give you and the profiles that I give you today are probably almost done. But like I said, they could be subject to slight changes. Here's the technology chart. This is probably going to change too. There's 18 technologies on there right now. We'll see if there's more or less or whatever by the time the game is finally put out. But like I said, just play testing now. That's what it takes to play the game. That's all my units there. I've been collecting for over a year now. The big boxes there, that's the major powers. And then the little boxes are the minor powers and the neutrals and the chips and everything you need. And then the tiny one on top there, that is China. So anyway, we're going to get into the infantry class first. So let's start with the infantry class. Now, one of the beauties about this game, if you're a global warrior, you played 1936 before, is that much of this game is the same. Much of the mechanics are the same, and many of the units are the same as well, or close to it. Like the naval units, they have some kind of corresponding type of vessel in the 36 game. And of course the 36 game has a lot more of them, right? Because as technology evolved and more things were invented. And same for the air class. The air class in this game is nothing like it. But the infantry is almost exactly the same. There's a couple of new units. First of all, we have the colonial troops and we have the trench fighters. But let's just go through them one by one. So first of all here, we just have the regular infantry. And you know, he's just like an infantry in the other game. Does exactly the same thing. He costs 3 IPP. He moves 1 space, he attacks at 2, and he defends at 4, right? That's without any modifiers. Just like the infantry in 36. And then you have your militia, the yellow guy here. That's a Chinese one. I did all my militia sculpts the same for ease of identifying them. And then the colonial troops, I'm doing them in Anzac sculpts. Anzac from Axis and Allies, right? So then I'm putting them on these chips that I got from Historical Board Gaming. But I'm doing them in all the different colors, and so, you know, coming up, I needed something around close to 90 of them, and that's not easy to find, right? So anyway, I started calling friends and everything. I got Young Grasshopper sending me some from Toronto, and Doug at Historical Board Gaming is sending me up a bunch as well. Plus there's the game store about 2 blocks from here. I bought a 2nd edition last year, and I wonder if I have some, and I opened it up, and sure enough, there was a little bag of them that hadn't even been opened yet. So anyway, that's going to be cool. So these guys are essentially the same thing. The difference is that the militia will be at home, and the colonial troops will be in the colonies. like down in Africa or Asia. So like if you were to build a militia up here for the Italians, you would put the militia on. And if you were to build a colonial troop down here for the Italians, then you would put the colonial troop on. But like if you only had one of them, they do exactly the same thing. So they're going to cost you two, just like a militia in the other game. They'll move one space, they'll attack at one, they'll defend it two. Now that's not the same as version 2, but that's basically the same as version 3 in Global War 36. But anyway, that's the difference, and you can put them on wherever that you see these manpower icons, right? And the other thing about that is if you manage to put 2 there, like let's take a look at this territory here, French territory. So let's say France, for $2, they put this guy on, right? The following turn or any turn after that, what they could do is they could spend $2 and they could upgrade that guy to an infantry. And that's a pretty big deal because you can't just put infantry down here, and infantry are twice the strength as a colonial troop, right? Or a militia, because they're 2 and 4 instead of 1 and 2, right? So much better to have these down here. And in a defensive game, it's tough if you get a bunch of infantry down there. It's going to be tough for anybody else to take control of Africa because it's so divided, right? And so like if France were to take over this place here, this is a German place, well there's a manpower icon, so they could stick a colonial troop on there when in their place units phase, right? Anyway, but in order to upgrade it, it has to be in a supply path. Like you have to be able to trace a supply path from a factory in your home country to here in order to do that, right? And as long as it's not blockaded, or there's not a sub in the way for interdiction, or like as long as you could trace a path down there. And remember, a supply path isn't exactly the same as a Lend-Lease path. Like you don't need a railway or anything. It could just simply be countries that are beside each other. Like you've got a clear path from here to France, right? So that's supply path. Then you've got your next moving on. You got your mountain infantry, exactly the same as a mountain infantry in 1936. So that's going to cost you $4. He attacks at 2, defends at 4, defends at 5 if he's in the mountains. And he doesn't suffer the mountain penalty if he's the attacker. The defender is +1 if he's a mountain infantry. So exactly the same. And then you've got your Marine again. He's 4 IPP, and he's like a dude. He attacks at 2, defends at 4. Same thing as a Marine in 36. They don't suffer double casualties. That's basically the only thing. And plus, they can cross a river without the -1 penalty, without the river penalty. And then the new thing here, this is called a trench fighter. And I'm not sure what I'm going to use for sculpts for this. I've only got a few of these German sculpts. I wish I could get a whole set and do them like the Anzac infantry, like paint them all the different colors and everything. Because I don't mind using all the same sculpts in this game. To me, it's not as important as the 36 game to have, country-specific sculpts. In this game where most people aren't as familiar with the units, it's easier to identify them if they were all the same, right? And they're not all the same. Like the infantry is all different from each other, but for the most part, the ships, the cavalry, a lot of things are the same in this on my board. Anyway, so a trench fighter, he's going to cost you $3, and you can only build them where there's a trench. So a trench is anywhere where the defender has at least 6 infantry in the territory. So here, let's take a look over here. I've got 6 infantry in this territory. So that means that these guys are entrenched, right? Now these guys could buy a trench fighter, and basically it just gives you better offense. It does not give you better defense, because these guys are going to defend at 4. These guys are only going to defend at 2, right? A trench fighter is attack 2, defense 2, cost 1, and movement 1 and cost 3. Plus, if you're in a trench, you're going to get +2 for your infantry anyway. So this guy's going to defend at 6. This guy's going to defend at 4. So you're not buying them for defense. What you're buying them for is the offense, because these guys get first strike. I mean, these guys roll at 2, so do these guys. But these guys get first strike, so you're going to take the casualties off if they manage to hit somebody. And the other thing is that if they hit somebody, then it's also a targeted hit. So that matters a lot in this game. Like if you only had, that's 7, I guess. So if you only had 6 infantry, and you say you had a couple of cavalry, even though cavalry's worth more, if I was choosing the casualty here, I'd probably take an infantry off, because then he'd only have 5 infantry left, which means he's not entrenched anymore, so he loses that +2, and that means I can make a second attack. If somebody's entrenched, you can only roll or attack for 1 round, right? So that's what these guys are for, is for that target selection, and it will be a big deal if these guys manage to hit something. Right now, though, currently they're on the technology chart, so you would have to roll for technology to get like any other technology, to get these things, right? To get the benefit of purchasing them. Anyway, that's the infantry class. So moving on, we have the vehicle class. Global War 36 used to have the armor class, but they don't anymore. What they have now is a vehicle class. So that includes your motorized kind of things, and your tanks and stuff. But in this game, there's only one real I guess a couple of armor units. But anyway, these 4 units are the vehicle class right here. So first of all, you have the tank. And a tank in this game is not very powerful. It has its attributes, but it's not going to be widely used. I'd be surprised if the Ottomans ever built one. You know what I mean? For one thing, they're on the technology chart. I'm hoping that they take it out of the technology chart by the time the game starts, because I'd really like to see tanks in the game, right? But I don't think that many people are going to develop them if they have to spend their technology points doing that, right? So anyway, the tank on here is it costs you 6 IPP. It'll attack at 4, defend at 2, and movement of 1. However, that's basically over flat ground, right? It can't move in the mountains. So in a mountain territory, there's no movement at all. That's why I was saying that it's probably not going to happen that the Ottomans built one, because they're in mountains, right? I don't see why you would do that, and that's fine. Like I agree with that. Maybe that should be that they don't do it. But like Russia is a wide open territory. The Western Front is wide open. Most of Europe, not Southern Europe, but most of Europe is non-mountainous, and that's where the tanks were used, right? And so that's the way it should be. But each attacking tank increases the number of defending infantry needed to form a trench line by 1. So I was talking just a minute ago about the 6 infantry. If you had 1 tank going into there, then they'd need 7 infantry for that to be a trench. And if they had 2 tanks, then they'd need 8. You know what I mean? Like it'll just keep increasing for every tank that you buy. But that's basically it. Like a tank is a pretty good hitter at 4. It's better than an infantry, but it's no better than an artillery though. So artillery costs 1 IPP less. I'm just looking at the chart here. I'm not totally familiar. Like I played the game and everything. It's just I don't have these numbers committed to memory, so I have to keep looking. So that's the tank. Then we have the armored car over here. And an armored car is actually a pretty good unit in this game, other than the fact that it doesn't move in mountains at all either. It's got a target selection of 1, and that includes against fighters. So that's pretty cool. They will attack at 3, defend at 3, move 2 spaces, and cost 4. So they're actually a pretty good unit, because there's not very many offensive units in this game, right? Because of the lack of tanks, and because the air power isn't really a combat unit. Later on, fighters could be a combat unit, but even they're not very powerful. Most of the air units are, and there's not many of them, are used for strategic bombing in this game, right? Anyway, so that's the armored car. Attack and defend at 3. That's pretty good. Like that's almost as good a defense as an infantry and a better attack value than an infantry. And infantry is something that will be mostly used in this game. That's why you see so many infantry icons on here, right? Like the game was the war was more infantry than technology back then, and there was obviously a limited amount of manpower, so that limits how many infantry class units you can put on per turn. But there's no limit to how many armored cars you can put on. Anyway, the next thing is camels. Now you'll never see a camel like this. When I was there playtesting this game and other games in Tulsa with the gang down at Historical Board Gaming, Doug gave us all a bunch of camels, and I actually got 2 packages of them. So I managed to spray paint them. So there'll be some kind of camel unit, but he's not going to be this guy. I really like this guy. He's really soft rubber too and everything. I just think they look cool. But anyway, them and cavalry are pretty much exactly the same, except for the camel is not subject to desert terrain rules, and it must be built in or adjacent to the desert. And these things here, camels and cavalry, can be built where the manpower icons are. So you could build a camel right here, right? Because there's a manpower icon, and you're in a territory that has desert in it. Even if the desert was only over here, you'd still be adjacent to it. So you can do that, right? Now, the cavalry, their advantage over camel is that it doesn't have movement restrictions in the mountains. Like anything that has normally a 2 is reduced to 1s in the mountains, but the cavalry isn't. And I guess there probably isn't even any other units in this game because the tanks and the armored cars don't move. But anyway, cavalry is the only thing that's going to move two spaces in the mountains, right? So there is a difference between the two of them, and they both do have their uses, right? But it's cool to see something new like a camel in there. So that is, and I didn't give you the numbers though, did I? So the cavalry and the camel, like I said, same numbers. They cost 4, attack 3, defend 3, and move 2. So the movement in deserts, for instance, is cut down to 1, and so that camel will be able to go 2 spaces still because he's not subject to those rules, right? Anyway, I think it's the air class next. Hang on. I was wrong. It's the artillery class that's next, not the air class. So there's only 2 things in the artillery class. It's artillery and heavy artillery. And they do exactly the same things, exactly the same way, movement and all that. The difference is the numbers, right? So an infantry is going to cost 4, and it's going to attack and defend at 4. Heavy artillery is going to cost 6, 7, and it's going to attack and defend at 5. Isn't it? No, 6. Sorry, it's going to attack and defend at 6. And another cool thing is that there's no restriction on these things, right? It's not on the technology chart. So you can build these things right from the first turn, right? In 1914. And these are going to be your big hitters in the game. Like these are your powerful units. Unlike in 36, they're almost an afterthought. Oh, okay, I'll throw some artillery in as well, right? Whereas this game, with the absence of tanks and the absence of air power on the battlefield, your hitters are going to be artillery, right? And that's the way it was. I mean, when the First World War started, artillery was the big weapon, and had been for hundreds of years, really, right? Anyway, so they're going to do the same as 36 infantry. So they're gonna bump up your guy by 1 if you're attacking, right? And also there's an attrition attack, and that's for both of these. So what it means is, like, you could have an attrition attack from this territory to this territory, right? You can shoot across the border without moving and without them being able to shoot back at you. You can only do it for 1 round though. So you'll find quite often, if you don't have anything else to do and you've got 6 artillery sitting there, maybe a couple heavy artillery, then you're just going to blast away at the guy, right? because there's no reprisals unless there is a technology, and we didn't develop it yet in our game. We were working on it, but we hadn't gotten that far. It's called counter battery fire, and so when you do an attrition attack into an adjacent territory, if they've got artillery, they can fire back with their artillery. So you don't want to just fire in with 2 artillery if that guy's sitting there with 20 of them and that technology, right? That'd be a bad idea. So on the smaller artillery here, that attrition attack would be at 1. So kind of a faint hope, right? You're just chucking the dice, and hopefully you can shoot this guy 50 miles or however far his range was and hit something. And then, but the other guy, that's where you're, he's at 2, right? So that helps out. You're rolling, like if you had 10 of those, 10 dice at 2, no reprisals on an attrition attack. And again, they do the same as well, pair to give your infantry a +1 attack. And also with artillery, like the Marine infantry, there's no river penalty. It's not like you're gonna, slog the artillery through the water, get on the other side, and then shoot it, right? Like you're gonna shoot on your side of the river, and then you're gonna go across, right? So and plus first strike. I don't think I mentioned that. Artillery is first strike, just like it is in 36. So basically the same as 36, except a little more powerful. In the other game, this is a 3 instead of a 4 for attack and defense. And I think this is a 4 and a 4. So in this game, it's a 6. And defense, I think, is different, though. Let me look here. Heavy artillery. Oh, yeah, so heavy artillery only defends at 3. So this guy's actually a better defender than this guy. But, 3 is still not too bad, right? Anyway, so we're going to get to the air class units now. Okay, looking at the air class there, first thing we're going to look at is fighters. There's 4 different fighters in this game, but don't worry, you're not going to have to buy 4 different sculpts for it. I'll explain. So when you buy a fighter in 1914 or start with one in the game, it only costs you 3 IPP. It only goes 2 spaces, and it doesn't have any attack and defense value. So all you're going to be able to use it for is for observation. What observation is that if you pair that 1-to-1 with your artillery or your heavy artillery, then you can get +1 for that artillery, right? So that's what observation is. So that's all you can do until 1916. So that's 6 turns or 5 turns, I think, because you started in the summer of 1914. So then these things are on the technology chart, and you can develop this technology, but you can only get so far ahead of everybody else. So I don't know why you would want to do that. It's kind of you're using up one of your technology spots in order to get a fighter from 1916 1 turn earlier than everybody. That's all you can do, right? So in 1916, your fighter's going to cost 5. So what happens is all the fighters that are on the board at the start of the round, not at the start of your turn. We kind of had that discussion, and then also I found out from the rules guys afterwards that indeed you do it at the start of the round. Every fighter on the board, you ask, okay, am I going to upgrade this fighter to a 1916 fighter or not? So what you would do is you pay $2, which is the difference in cost, right? You pay $2 for that and make it a 1916 fighter, or you remove the fighter from the board because it's obsolete after that, right? I mean, these things were paper thin anyway, right? They weren't going to last 3 years in combat, right? And especially not with people taking shots at them now. So at the start of 1916, everybody has to decide if their fighters are worth, or if they've got the money to. I can't see people not wanting to do that. You'd have to be pretty low on funds, I think, not to want to keep your fighters and upgrade them. Because an upgraded fighter, actually, like that one, is hardly useful, right? It's only pairing 1-to-1 with a tank and only going 2 spaces. But the next version, 1916, it has attack 2, defense 2, movement of 2 again, and it costs 5. Now it has dogfighting ability. So you can fight other fighters now with a 1916 fighter. That's all you can do is fight other fighters and observation. So you can always do the observation. And then in 1917, so only 3 turns later, again, everybody decides at the start of the round, am I going to upgrade my fighters? And if they don't, they take them off, right? And for the ones that do get upgraded, now they have the observation and they have the dogfighting, but they also have ground strike. So now they can fire at units on the ground. And also they have an interception value. So they can try to stop zeppelins. Like we'll get to zeppelins and airships in a minute. But they and bombers, they'd be able to accompany, just like a strategic bombing raid in 1936. It works almost identical in this game, but with different units, right? Like they're not necessarily going the same distance and stuff. But anyway, 1917 fighter, you've also got the interception in there, and the interception is at 1. Now, a 1919 fighter, and you can see here, so if you bought the German fighter, great. But how could you do that and not buy yourself a Red Baron, huh? It's a triplane. You got to go out and get yourself one of those if you're going to get this game. Anyway, so that attack at 5, defense 5, movement of 3 now. Actually, the 1917 fighter was movement of 3 as well. So movement of 3, and it costs 9. Again, everybody's got to pay the $2 or lose it, right? So you can have observation, dogfighting, ground strike, and now naval strike. Plus 2 for interception, not 1 anymore. So that's the best fighter you're going to get, but the game's almost over by then, right? You've only got, 3 rounds left, unless you're doing some kind of variable ending or doing the Russian Civil War, then it's going to go past 1919, right? Anyway, so those are the fighters. Let's get to the other things. And here you see the rest of the air class. So first thing we have over here is a seaplane. Seaplanes are actually pretty useful in the 36 game we're fighting, but I think that they're going to be more important in this game because with fighters being so ineffective, and there's no tactical bombers, there's no medium bombers, you know what I mean? There's only a strategic bomber basically. And so a seaplane is one of the few things that air power that's going to be able to take part in a naval battle until 1919 when your fighters can, right? So a seaplane is still only going to hit a submarine or a transport, but at least, you know, like you could, if you have a seaplane base, then you could scramble up to 3 seaplanes from it. Like you could scramble into a zone where a naval battle was happening in anticipation of amphibious assault, and then wipe out the guy's transports, right? If you manage to hit with a seaplane, right? It basically works the same as in the 36 game, including the 2 for maritime air patrol, like the 2 spaces that you got for maritime air patrol. Anyway, it attacks at 3, defense at 3, it moves 6, and it costs 7 IPP. It says observation, pair 1-to-1 with a ship or submarine. And it's got a maritime patrol range of 2. So yeah, it is a pretty useful unit in this game, considering there's hardly any air power, right? That's not too bad to have. And you'll find in the starting setup that there's actually quite a number of them on the board. When Doug asked me what I needed to do the play testing, I thought, oh, okay, well, now you've got seaplanes. I said, I need this many seaplanes. And I should have looked at the setups first, because I grossly underestimated how many seaplanes I was going to need for this game. I didn't even have enough for the opening setup, right? So I had to improvise a bit. Anyway, not a bad unit. The next thing we have here is an observation balloon. I don't know if you necessarily call that an air class unit, but I'm just going to throw it out there right now anyway. And it's got no attack and defense value. It only costs $1. And what it is for observation, just like it says in the name, right? So you will pair your infantry or your heavy infantry with one of those, and you can attack. Now you don't have to move this thing into the zone. You could be in an adjacent zone, because he only goes 1 space anyway, right? You couldn't move in and then move out again anyway. So you can use them from the adjacent zone, or use them in the zone that you're in. It's up to you. You can move them in. Yeah, like they're I was building some of them, but I think it takes a while in the game for you to build up. You can't just buy them to use as cannon fodder, like instead of losing infantry or something, because these are they don't die right until you take over a territory where there is one. Then they just come off the board, right? Because I don't know, you just can't reach them. I don't know, but anyway, that's how it's played with the observation balloons. The next thing we have here is a Zeppelin. Now, a Zeppelin and an airship are exactly the same things, except for the German one's called a Zeppelin and the other guys are called airships. And the German one has one better number on it, and I'll get to that. So what a Zeppelin does is strategic bombing. It must be in an adjacent or to a land zone. So you can't go 2 spaces out into the water with a Zeppelin and not come back again, like not be able to make it back again. You have to be within one zone of a land zone. And then it's got maritime air patrol. So you can pair one with artillery to heavy artillery for +1 attack and attrition, +1 defense with warships and coastal defense. So if you have one of these in your navy and your navy's getting attacked, then all your ships are going to get +1 for it, right? With that observation, they're actually pretty powerful. Anyway, for the strategic bombing now, you only get 1 dice, and for the German, it's 1 to 4, and for the other airships, everybody else's airships, they're 1 to 3. So you roll a d6, and you have to get a 1 to 4. 5 or 6 means nothing. You miss the target, right? Whereas 1 to 4 means you take that much off. So if you roll a 3, then the other guy loses $3, right? Or sorry, doesn't lose $3. His facility is damaged by 3, whatever facility you're attacking. And then it's also with both of these strategic bombing, it's the same strategic bombing raids as in 36. So there's interception, and there's like you could bring fighters in with the Zeppelin or in with the bomber for interception, and you could also send up to try to stop them, send up defensive fighters to try to stop them. So these things will be a 1 for an interception value, and the strategic bomber is also 1. So your fighters will be rolling at 1 or 2 depending on what year they are, and then your unit there will roll in that dogfight, let's call it. They're thinking also about giving the Zeppelins and the airship a transport capability. So you'd have to transport from one, only a non-combat. So you could transport from one of your places to, say, a place down in Africa that you already own, and drop a guy off there. But it would just be 1 infantry class unit, and it would definitely not be an attack move. You can't sneak up on somebody with a Zeppelin, right? You could drop bombs on them in secret, and they wouldn't know until they hit. But anyway, so the cost of these things are $8, and they move 5 spaces. They don't have any defensive value, and the offensive value is 1 to 4. Hang on. I'm not sure what I don't think that they fight on offense. They just, they're for observation basically, but they're a really good observation, not just a balloon that can just do artillery. Like the fact that they can put those navies up and do the strategic bombing, I think that's where the value comes in. And then the last thing we're going to go for is the strategic bomber over here. Now it's a little bit more powerful than the Zeppelin. It doesn't do as many things, though. Obviously, it's not for observation, right? So you're not going to make anybody +1 with it. But you do get 2 dice, and it's the same. You got to roll a 1 to 4. I should mention it's 1 to 4 for the German Zeppelin. It's only 1 to 3 for anybody else's airship. So if you roll a 4, 5, or 6, then it's not a hit. Anyway, all strategic bombers are 1 to 4, and you get 2 dice to try to damage to add up damage on the facility. And the facilities are much like the 36 as well. In fact, they're almost exactly the same, and the numbers are almost exactly the same. So you can't damage it beyond whatever the limit is, right? Anyway, so the strategic bomber, it also does carpet bombing. So carpet bombing, just like in the 36 game, 3 dice at 2, and there's no heavy bomber or anything. That basically is the heavy bomber, right? It's probably still made out of cardboard, but it's a little bigger, and it carried bombs. And a strategic bombing raid is basically the same. Like you go in, okay, is there any fighters going to stop me? Okay, then you get through that, and then the inherent anti-aircraft guns will shoot at 3, and you will drop your bombs, and then if they hit, then you'd lose whatever like you'd lose one, right? If the anti-aircraft hit. So next we're going to get to the naval class units. All right, then that brings us to the naval class units, and like I was saying earlier in the video, the naval class units are kind of like the units in Global War 36. They've got some kind of corresponding unit in that game. For instance, your capital ships. So there's only one capital ship in this game, and that's your dreadnought here. That was the king of the seas back then. There was very, very early aircraft carriers in World War One, but of course they were just biplanes, right? And they weren't that strong. So the carrier wasn't the same weapon that it was in World War Two. So the dreadnought was the big boy in World War One, and it's just like a battleship. It attacks at 8 and defends at 8. It moves 2, and the cost is 4, 4, 4, 4. So 3 at 4. But we'll see though, because Global War 36 went down to a 3-stage build queue. Like I said, this game is not necessarily done yet. They're still playtesting. I don't know if they plan to change that or not. I never even brought that question up, but I just kind of came to mind why they made it back to 4 again. It could be because the turns are only 3 months, like there's 3 turns a year instead of 2. And like before, a year ago, this game had a 6-stage build queue, and I didn't like that at all, because you get to see your dreadnought tomorrow kind of thing, right? If you keep playing long enough. Anyway, so it's like a battleship though. It's 8, 8, 2, 4, 4, 4, 4, and the bombardment on it is 4 here. I guess I forgot to put the 8 on there, didn't I? I was doing so good too. There you go. Attack and defend at 8. And one cool thing too is all these boats attack and defend at the same. So you've got your cruiser. He attacks and defends at 6, just like a cruiser in 36. And his short bombardment is 2. Then you've got your pre-dreadnought, which is kind of like a coastal defense ship in Global War 36. So this is it attacks and defends at 7, but it's only got a movement of 1, and it costs 3, 3, 3, 3 to build, and the short bombardment is 3 on that. So not quite as good. And again, forgot my dice there. There we go. 7 and 3. The cruiser was 3, 3, 3 for a cost, so you'd have to pay 3 times, an extra time if you wanted that pre-dreadnought. But pre-dreadnoughts, they're really good if you're in and around Europe or in the Mediterranean or something. But they're not really for, like the Americans aren't going to stock up on them and sail them across the water, because they've only got a movement of 1, right? I mean, you've got your major naval bases in this game, and all the naval bases are the same in this game as they are in 36. They do exactly the same thing. Your ports, your shipyards, and your dockyards, they're all in this game. So, I mean, you can go +1 with those, but again, pre-dreadnought's only a movement of 1, so that's not very good at all. The cruiser had a movement of 3, and the battleship was 2. Then we got your the torpedo boat destroyer. Now that's kind of like a destroyer in 36, but this was the very first destroyer. Like they kind of built those out of necessity in World War One, and I tried to find some information about it when I was trying to pick what sculpt to use for this, because if I was to buy a whole bunch of torpedo, like you need a lot of them in this game. If I was to buy that many torpedo boat destroyers, at 5 of them for 3 something, it would have costed me an awful lot of money, right? So I went with this transport here. And it's got a T on it for transport. But why not T for torpedo boat destroyer, right? Anyway, when I looked up torpedo boat destroyers, what they were, this was last summer, right? Or even before last summer. Basically what they were was any kind of boat they could find that was fairly small and speedy that you could launch a torpedo from. So there was no such thing as a specific torpedo boat destroyer. They just grabbed whatever boat they could use and put a torpedo thing on it, right? That was it. And in fact, the picture that I seen of a torpedo boat destroyer looked exactly like this boat right here. This is, by the way, my neutral colors. I'm doing all my neutrals in white. I'm not going to piss around this time with doing different colors for everybody. Not for this game, I'm not. Anyway, so so people wonder, oh, why are you using a transport? You know, because I am. Shut up. Just play the game. And they were cheap, right? Like you could get 50 of them for $2 when he had the off-colored stuff, and that's what I did. Then, of course, you've got your coastal submarines right here, and your regular submarines, and they're basically the same as the coastal submarine and the submarine in the 36 game as well. They're going to cost $5 for the coastal submarine. They're going to move one space, and they're going to attack and defend it too. So I think that's exactly the same as 36. And then again, these numbers are the same as 36: 3, 3, 3, and 6. So cost 3, and then move 3, attack, defense 3. And subs are exactly the same in this game. Like I said, it's going to be beautiful if you've already played 36 to be able to transition to this game. The alliances are different, and you know, trench warfare is going to be different, and there's units that aren't going to be there, and you're going to have to learn how to use some other units. But basically, it's the same game, you know, and that's good because that 36 is an awesome game, right? So anyway, so basically, subs are going to do exactly the same. These guys will attack at 3. These guys will attack and defend at 2. And then your naval transport, again, same as the other one. So they move 2 spaces and they cost 7. They don't attack and defend. I've got one over here, the Russian one. And they carry 1 infantry class unit plus 1 other unit. So that includes a fighter, right? Like you could put an infantry and a fighter on there if you wanted. That's something that I'd never seen before until the last game that we played. And then the last thing I want to show you is just I'll show you the facilities are basically the same in the game. Same cost and everything. So you got your major factories, you got your medium factories, and you got your minor factories. So you build 5, you build 3, you build 1, right? The difference is with the manpower. Like if you were to have a factory, this isn't a French territory, but if it was, you had a factory with 1 manpower on there, you couldn't put 5 infantry here. You could only put 1 infantry. So you could put 1 infantry and 4 other things here. You don't put 1 infantry and 5 things for the factory. You subtract the number of infantry that you put on. You could put no infantry on there, put 5 things on here. But if you do put that infantry on, then you subtract that from what you can take from the factory. That was one of the things that we got wrong in our play test the last time. So anyway, that's and here, like this guy is 3, and there's a manpower icon. So if he put a dude there, he can only build 2 more things. And then, of course, you got your fortifications, which are exactly the same, and your coastal artillery, that's exactly the same as well. And those are the kind of units that you're going to be able to buy for the players. And there are facilities I'm in. Now, I thought about this for facilities. Let me just take you over here. This is where I keep all my facilities, right? And I can play whatever game I want with them. So, you know, like you got your sub pens and you got your coastal guns and bunkers and everything. But there's also seaplane bases. So why would I get new seaplane bases to play in the 30 or the 14 game, right? One thing that is not on here is an airbase, right? Like they all they use was fields, right? But they do have airship bases in the game. So I was looking around, seeing what I could get, you know, what I should use for that. And I thought, why not just use all these air bases I have? Because basically what the airship bases looked like, they were a really long hangar that was this shape, right? And you could fit an air base in them. I just put there's an observation tower there too. Big deal, right? Those are my airship bases. And then all your other facilities are the same. You know, like you got your shipyards, minor shipyards, major shipyards, minor ports, and major ports. Here's your minor port. These are just what I use. And then you got your shipyards, your major and minor shipyards as well, right? So if you've got all your facilities, then you probably don't need to buy any more for this game. The facilities will be printed on, just like the V3 map, right? It's just if you wanted to upgrade them, you'd need probably 5 of each, right? So that you could upgrade this to a major shipyard if you want to. You just put the blue marker over top, blue shipyard marker over top of that, right? So if you've already got the markers for the 36 game, you don't need many more markers for this game. Like you're going to need some poison gas, for instance, and I think supply markers and stuff. These are things you might already have anyway, right? I know I already had some of this stuff. I thought, I don't need to buy any of that. I got those things. I didn't know why I had them, but you know, they just seemed to show up, right? Anyway, so that's the units in this game. I'll do a few more videos and stuff. Like we're gonna finish the summer off here. I've still got stuff to do with the lake, and you know I got to split wood and everything, and get ready for the winter out at the lake. And then when I'm down there, I got nothing to do all winter. I don't know if we're gonna get a hockey season, so I'm gonna have lots of time to make videos. And so I'm going to play a play test against my friend Robert Hatcher down in Pennsylvania. And we're going to do it on YouTube, and you'll be able to tune in and watch it, and you'll be able to comment on it. You'll be able to see how it's played, and I'm really looking forward to it because, first of all, I really like Robert. Richard. I really like Robert. I call him Colonel Bob because he used to be a colonel in the Army. Anyway, he's a really good guy, and I really like him, so I'm looking forward to interacting with him. But also, he's an avid player, and I'm sure he's going to give us a ton of information. He's going to teach me a lot about stuff. Like he is taking a lead role in this game, right? I was supposed to go down there with him and Doug and play test it in Tulsa, and I couldn't make it because of the coronavirus outbreak. So it was him and Doug, and they did a lot of the work on this game. So he's going to be able to answer a lot of questions, and then you can put suggestions in if you want. Don't be surprised if they don't take them, because you know, like I could have 100 suggestions, they might take one of them too. That's not how it works. You know, like if you've got a good idea and they like it, then they might use it. But don't be surprised if they don't use it, right? That's just the way it is. But anyway, you can follow along all you want and check it out. We're not going to have anybody else play test with us though, because for one thing, you need all the map and all the pieces and everything. And we've talked about, we've got a specific idea of what we want to do and everything. So it's just going to be the two of us, and I expect it's going to take a while, right? Because just two people doing it and doing a whole game of global war. It's not like just doing a game of Axis and Allies, right? Like you're going for a long time. This game takes longer, 2 or 3 times longer to play than Axis and Allies. So it's going to be a long haul playing that thing. So I'm hoping that we also get a game of 36 going up at Panzer King's place, because my table here, I've only got one of them. So it's gonna be 1914 till probably Christmas time or whenever Colonel Bob and I get done. Don't know what the teams are gonna be. Don't know anything. So tune in this fall and watch us play test 1914. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and checking out the units. Remember, they could change. They could change by the time we start play testing. They could change when we are play testing. We might change them in the middle, right? So watch for that. Anyway, take care, everyone. General Hand Grenade out.